ready to get back on the horse here. I believe I've compiled enough to show the next stage of this. And remember, we are going to be going fast. So last time we kind of learned about functions a little bit, right? Or was that in the video that got deleted? I'm not sure. Anyway, we did learn about variables or variable types or whatever. I've added one here. We got just something I can use here. So I had to make this really big, so we're going to have to, now that we know what's what here. Okay, so the auto functions just take an integer, a couple of integers, or a couple of doubles, and return the added value, the addition. So just basic math addition. So here's a loop. Here's the do while loop. Here's a for loop. And here's a while loop. Those are the three loops that exist in C++. If you see any other loops, or it's renamed, you've made them yourself. So a do while loop is interesting because it always runs once, no matter what the condition is. And just like an if statement that we learned last time, it's got a condition. That's what's between these. Okay? And the condition I've set for this do while loop is the bool, the lights, which I've set to 0. And it's false by default, or 0. The while loop will quit because it's not true. Lights equal true. So this will run one time, it'll get to the condition, and you can see it's written that way. The while is after the do. The condition is the last thing, not the first thing. Now this is a pretty unique and not used all that often, but could be quite useful in the right situation. You normally don't have that in a game engine. At least somewhere deep in the code you might, but you wouldn't have it for your main loop because you'd always want it to just consistently run, and it's deep inside, and it once you initialize it, you just keep going with it. You don't need the do while loop because you wouldn't want it to run once and quit. How would that help, right? So that doesn't make sense for a main loop. But the for loop is a heavily used loop. It's usually not a main loop because it's a limited loop. It actually works on its own, it builds conditions, as in it initializes its own integer to basically count with. This is in C++, when you add a plus, that automatically increments. In fact, we could just do this. We could say a++, but we're adding two variables. But if we just wanted like a increment, maybe it's an A. Anyway, it should be red anyway. Increment. That's good anyway. So if we wanted to just increment a value, like an integer, and you notice we can use A again. Inside of here is its own little scope, and it also lives inside of this scope of the function. And if you wanted to just increment A, you could do it just like that. Okay? Down here with the I, that's what's happening. It's starting from 0 up. Now I is not allowed to be any larger than x is. It's always than x. And right now x is equal to 8. Okay? 8 times, it counts 0 as one of them. Let's just see what this does. Let's skip ahead to the good part. Okay? So what this does is it runs the do while loop once and prints this out. Then we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the light turned 8. And why does it say that? That's just what I had it say. I used the toString from string, and I put the X in there. And then it just creates a new line. So it goes over and over and over until I equals 7, which is less than 8, or sorry, yeah, it's less than 8, but it's less than X, and it starts at 0. So 0 is number 1. Like, for example, 0 triggered that line. So that's number 1. If you take away the 0 one, you get 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Because this never actually got to 8. X equals 8, but I equals 7 plus 0, which makes 8. It's not a literal math. It's like if you're counting on your fingers, but you count 0. 0, 1, 2, 3. Get it? Binary also. That's what people seem to not get about binary, is that it uses the 0. Hey guys, what's up? Hello, what is this? This is C++ tutorial. I'm coding, yes. The first 4 videos, the first 4 streams were a bit long to just show you the hello world, but I show you like every detail, give you a little bit of background on C++, give you my unique kind of perspective, and told you a little bit about my history with it. So these are loops, and those are functions, and those are the variables, and now you can start to see how a language is building here. If you know any other programming languages, then you're going to start to understand this stuff a lot better. And to tell you a little bit more about my history, I began with HTML code, and back then it was a little bit simpler, but it's still pretty simple. It's a good place to start. If you're just struggling this and you're like, this is way too hard for me, even though I'm going baby step through it, I just can't get it, go start with HTML, and you can code web pages, and maybe you make some money with it. I've never really made money with C++ yet, but I have with HTML, so there you go there. What else was I going to show you? I was going to go a little deeper into this. I'm not sure how long the stream's already been running, but we're going through this pretty quickly, right? I took the while loop out because while loop, well, let me show you what while loop does. We already looked at this. Oh, that's right. That was in the other video. But this is what it does. It just runs forever. Okay? You can see it flickering, and it's, yeah. That's the while loop. Okay? And that's what's normally used as your main engine loop or your main program loop to just consistently update it. And you would have, here's a good chance to show how functions and loops work in unison. Let's say we had an update function, and we're gonna call our update. Well, actually, let's do integer update, and we're gonna do integer because update to do is return to us, kind of like a callback. We'll learn about that soon too. Let's say we took this out, right? So that's not going to fire anymore. And we put it in update. So what happens, right? Exactly the same thing. Because all you're doing is replacing that line with a new scope of code. That's a function. And we've already seen how you can add its own little scope of these are variables that you pass in. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but I can't, it's not coming to me. But like I said, it can be unique to the function. You can continue to use the same name if you really wanted to. You'll find that's not really good practice, though. And you can then use A, just like I did in increment. You could use A. And then if this is auto, this is going to be a void because it doesn't return. But if I just add the return, and I say return A, then what happens, right? Let's actually get that out of there. In fact, we'll get this out of here entirely. And we will just increment A. We'll start with X. We'll say increment, and we'll throw X in there. X just equals 0. So this should just count X up. But you notice when it goes into increment, it turns into A is incremented, and then it returns A back to us, which is this, which will fire the whole function. However, we're not printing anything anymore. So in order to get my string to print, we could do it like this. Already got string included, we can use toString, and we can take we can take this, and instead of incrementing it, we'll update it. We'll pass X, which equals 0, into update. We'll just call that X so it makes more sense. We'll stick X in the out string. We don't need to return. We'll just do a void for now. And we'll increment it in here. So X, that X becomes this X, which is this X, which is printed, and it should increment X. Okay, well, it's a start. But it's looping and it's actually printing a number, so that's good. Probably the problem here is that this is not doing its job properly. So let's try something else. Let's just see if we can stick it right in there, because sometimes this will work. If there's no issues with it, it'll work. In other words, if it's too complex a code, it'll fail. Well, it now equals something. But the toString is probably, it's evaluating it like a Boolean or something. Like it's only 0 or 1, like it exists or it doesn't. So, let's see. Maybe the auto doesn't really help. What's the problem there? Can't overload it based on return type. Oh, well, it just went away. I clicked somewhere else. Okay. Let's try this one more time and see what happens. Well, it could be that X is a global variable. Okay, and this comes into when people talk about variables in the global and why it causes issues. You'll hear that a lot. So this is why it causes issues. So if we were to do something like this, for example, it might actually work. Nope. And it doesn't report 1 either. So my guess is that we're returning an integer First of all, we can do this and get rid of that line. But let's see what happens. It's not returning the correct integer properly. I'm not sure why. It could be the way we're printing it. Let's just try A. Let's see what happens. how it is that you print integers. Tostring should have worked, but I might not even have. That's not going to work. So you would have to use toString. Well, it could just be the way our increment function is working. But anyway, well, I can't leave it like that. If I leave it like that, let me try something else here. Just to see if we can get it working a little easier. And we'll use X there. Actually, let's see if we can shove it right in there. Just to make sure it updates properly since it's global. Oh, it doesn't like that. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Now, we've gotten it out of there, and now all this is going to do is increment, but it's also going to return it. So let's just have it return that. And see if this works. I think it doesn't match the function type. Oh, because of this. So you have to do it that way. Now. I don't understand why that doesn't work. Oh, it's a void. Oh. I didn't want that file. It's handy to have it create headers for you like that, but I want as few files as possible most of the time. Let's see here. Oh, it's the return type. So if this was an increment, anyway, yeah, it's the return type. So we just need to do it like that. Huh. Well, now that's curious. Did we do... That might have done it. Return value does not... I don't understand why that... Yeah, it does. Oh, boy. Haha. There we go. Gotta watch that stuff. Now that's the kind of tricky stuff that'll trip you up in C++. And other languages for that matter. You always gotta check your syntax. I don't know why this won't report anything but a 0. Let's try this here. It's gonna do this thing where it mangles it. Oh, it's not gonna mangle it that time. It's gonna do something else. Okay. It's possible that it's not actually incrementing it. That is interesting. It should be working, as far as I know. Not sure what I'm doing wrong here. Let's try something. Yeah, I do believe it's the way that an integer displays in the console. Let me check that real quick. Oh. Now I'm thoroughly confused. Let's see. Let's see what we got here. If integer x equals 0, we pass the 0 into update, and then it updates it. Well, that should be working. But it could be... Well, let's try something. I got an idea. Let's make that a constant value. Oh, wait. That won't work. Let's make it a static. That might work. No? Huh. Okay, I got another idea. Let's try. C++ is not always this difficult, but specifically what we're doing here, for some reason, this didn't used to be this difficult. With C++ 11, let me see what we're actually using here. That could make a big difference. Oh, there you go. Yeah, all of this should work in C++ 20. That was C++ 14. No wonder. Okay, that one doesn't, but what happens if I do it like that? All right. Well, I showed you the while loops. We tried to get deeper into this. This is how you make functions, and this should essentially be working. I'm not sure why it isn't. But when we start up the next stream, I will locate the source of this issue, and we'll get more into it. I was going to go into... Basically, I work with GPT. Use it as a tool. It doesn't do all the coding for me, but we'll get into it. You'll see as the stream goes on how that works exactly. But I basically had started working, making a GUI system, which started just a few files, and at first glance it looks a lot like the entry point system. It looks a lot like Almond Core. And yeah, I want to get to the point where we're working on the cross-platform source for Almond Core, and we're starting to get the rendering in, because I did this very quickly using GPT, by the way. And I want to keep that ball rolling and get to the point where we actually create Almond Engine. I also want to teach along the way and help people come along the way, because C++ has fallen out of favor and it's a difficult language still, even though it's gotten a lot better, more possible. And it's still a difficult language in comparison to some. But I mean, you only need to know a certain amount about a language to build certain programs that can allow you to change it to other languages, or to add scripting like Lua, and you need Lua for lots of languages. So there's always that. You don't have to be an expert in every or any specific language to accomplish a great deal. So practically anything you'd want. Most solutions are pretty easy to solve. I think these days you're looking more towards building apps rather than programs. What I'm referring to is the difference between UWP or Windows Store apps, or Google Play apps, or actual phone apps, as opposed to desktop programs. They're one and the same, but they are built differently with a completely different mindset, because for minimalism and optimized, etc. With more optimal languages, higher functioning languages that handle all that in the background. So it's also easier to some degree. Yeah, I will figure out why this didn't work. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong there. But that is essentially how it works, even though it's not incrementing the number currently. That is essentially how a main loop works in your main function. And those are all the loops, and we've covered all of that. And in the next one, we will be working with what I was going to try to get to in this one, which is we're going to take a look at the GUI thing. It's written in OOP. So we're going to learn OOP, and we're going to learn, what was it? Well, I wanted to show you, this is kind of functional programming right here, but it kind of failed. So I guess we'll pick up with the functional programming, and then we'll show the difference with OOP, and I'll probably spend some time to try to figure out precisely how to get like somewhat accurate statistics on what the overhead is, because it's very small, and I want to show you what it is in the beginning, and then as we work in advance with this, we will get good precise reading or a good footing on how much it expands when you scale it up. The scaling is the big thing when you're talking overhead, OOP versus functional, header only style versus not header only style. Whether or not you should be using an even lower level language to you'd be writing a teeny tiny little C++ implementation that calls to a C library that extends to C. That's how it really works. But for some people out there, there's a growing number of people that are enjoying writing in C, or attempting or challenging themselves, or whatever it is. A language is a language, and it has its abilities, and you choose that language based on the abilities you require, or your familiarity with it, or its ability to accomplish the task. Not all programs are perfectly optimized by language, after all. Almost none are. A lot of that was just a side effect from trying to get away from difficult, low-level languages. Oh, I wanted to show you also string. I wanted to show you why it is like you need this toString, and why it is you need standard libraries with basic C++. There's support libraries. It's like a higher level abstraction from the actual language, because the language should handle language things, and toString is not really part of this language. It is a low-level or a mid-level language. It is not a high-level language. A high-level language would aim to have toString within its functions. Ergo, Java. So I've basically in these 5 episodes showed you the path that the original devs took to create a language like Java, or Go, or Rust, which is not cross-platform, or C#. Those two are both Microsoft, by the way, and that's a scary thing to rely on them entirely. I've always been a Microsoft developer, I guess. I've always coded on Windows, but I've never gone down a path like MFC or anything like that, because I learned in the open source world where I was working with Irlicht Engine. They had their own GUI. It was cross-platform. The design was a facade design with interfaces. So the whole engine was abstracted from itself, and you dealt with this layer. And that was cross-platform as far as you wanted to take it. And that's the way I learned. That's why I am interested in teaching people how to create static libs and how to run console applications in tandem and all of that. So there's your lesson for today, or for now. But like I said, I'm going to take some time, and I'm going to review where we made our mistakes here. Also a part of programming to do such a thing. And I'm going to come back with the functional and OOP, I guess, is where we're headed. Like I said, we're going through this fast. And I'm going to teach you, but I'm not going to, even if I wanted to, I couldn't make you an expert. You're going to have to start coding your own things, playing with the language, learning outside of this channel, which I highly recommend you come back because I have the more precise, detailed, and longevity of where we're headed with this project. But in order to keep up, if you wanted to go from I don't code at all to I'm going to code a game engine after watching this, you're going to have to go out and learn on your own as well in between. So as I produce these, you can subscribe to the channel if you like and get the notifications so you can follow along when I do updates. And in the meantime, you should be finding other channels as well, maybe subscribing to them and watching some of those tutorials to get a different take. You know, in this world, some people rely on degrees and experts and this and that, but we've seen in the last 10, 20 years that it's really the private sector that comes in, that it's someone that hasn't passed high school that innovates, that does things a little bit different way. And it's that, I mean, why haven't companies learned to go out and hire people that look like they could benefit their business? I mean, inside of a week, you would know whether or not to fire them. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, that is C++ tutorial while loops, or for loops and do while loops, loops in C++. I'm Adam Rushford. Happy coding. See you next time.